Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for yet another Girl Founder webinar. Today's guest is Dr Dharmica Mistry, a microbiologist who at just 22 made a medical breakthrough in breast cancer detection using a revolutionary blood test to diagnose the deadly disease. The scientist turned entrepreneur, filing an international patent and co-founding an Australian biotechnology company, all before her 25th birthday. In recognition of her groundbreaking research, Dharmica was awarded New South Wales Young Woman of the Year in 2016 and was dubbed one of Australia's top young executives by the Australian Financial Review. Today, she heads up a MedTech at a startup incubator called Cicada Innovations, as well as being a passionate advocate for women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, otherwise known as STEM. Dharmica, thank you so much for being with us today. Tell us, what is it about science that you love so much?
I think for me, and thank you for having me, by the way, for me, science is one of those things that's underrated when it comes to creativity. So as a scientist, you're actually a very creative person, and I think that's what I love about science the most. I think the second part to that is the sense of wonder I get from the world and how things work, and trying to understand that is a big part of science. So to me, it's like a tool, but it also brings out the explorer in me. So the scientific method is really about curiosity and getting out there and asking the questions to the problems that are out there and trying to solve them yourself. And so it's a really organic process. And I think the biggest thing is, I think we're all scientists. I mean, as toddlers, we all come out into the world saying, why does this happen? Why does this happen? I wonder why that happens. And we observe the world and we develop and learn. And so to me, everybody's a scientist. We do it every day. Otherwise, we wouldn't, fall down and break our bones, and we wouldn't do that again, because we know we've learned from that. And so, yeah, as humans, science is in our DNA.
I love it that you say that science is creative. I think often people don't associate that sort of thinking with something like science. But what happens then to kids? I mean, if yes, you do grow up and you have this curiosity with things like bugs, what happens then along the way, particularly with young girls, where they stop being interested in those things? Can you explain that?
I mean, I think it's different for everybody, but I think the fundamental difference is confidence as well, and understanding where you can end up with science. For me, that was the biggest problem growing up. You don't see many role models and people out there and understanding exactly, what a scientist does. You know what a law degree will get you, and how to become a lawyer, and same with doctors and other things, other trades like, mechanics and all sorts of things. But with science, it's such a broad thing. And it's like, well, I don't really know what kind of career I'll have. Where will I end up? What will I do? And we lose that train of thought as we're progressing through school and perhaps early university years. And I think that's why people like me need to talk about it more. What do you do every day?
Fantastic. So did you always dream of becoming a scientist? What was the sort of genesis for your career choice?
So for me, it really wasn't. It's something that happened very naturally. I just spent a lot of high school not really knowing what I wanted to do. I kind of tried to think about the things that I enjoyed and played to my strengths, because, if you're good at something, you're naturally going to excel at it. And for me, that was biology, right? Particularly biology when it came to science. And my interest lied there. I knew that it was something I wanted to pursue, but I didn't know what. Or how, I should say, or what sort of career that is, a recurring theme here. And so I did a bit of research, and I thought, you know what, I think I know what I want to do. I want to become a nutritionist and dietitian in hospital. So helping people through science and health and food, all the things that I loved. And that's what I decided to pursue by the end of year 12. That's what I came up with.
And what happened?
Well, I actually didn't get the marks. So I actually almost got the marks. I missed out by 0.01.
Wow.
On my result. Looking back, I think it was meant to be, because essentially I had to start thinking about university. And I thought, I'm still want to do the nutrition. Really, that's my heart is set on it. Mm-hmm. So I went to Sydney Uni and I copied their subjects, because a lot of the fundamental science stuff is initially the same. So I was like, I'm just going to copy their degree in my Bachelor of Science,
With the hope of transferring?
Sorry?
With the hope of transferring into the
Yes,
later
exactly.
on? Okay, so you're still attached to this idea of being a nutritionist.
Most definitely. It was on my hit list. Like, that's what I wanted. And then I fell in love with the subject, second year, called microbiology, which is the study of bacteria, fungi, and virus, which obviously in today's world, very relevant.
Yeah.
But those tiny little, we call them bugs in that field, have such a huge impact in our world and our lives, and we don't even know, but now we're learning to know, getting to know. So for me, that was where I truly fell in love with science and was like, I want to do this. This is what I love, and this is what I enjoy, and I have fun doing it.
Amazing. I love that sense of fun too, and just sort of sounds quite sort of by chance, really, that you stumbled into this really, really amazing field that's so well suited to you. I wanted to ask now if you were a top student both at school and university.
I'm not sure I was a top student. I would perform high when I put the hard work in. That's the way I've always been. So
Right.
in anything that I do in life, if I didn't put the work in, it would show. And I found that I excelled in the things that I really enjoyed. And I was really into, at university, I really loved, and in school actually, the practical side of science. So getting into a lab, designing an experiment, carrying it out, that stuff really made me excel in terms of my education. But I took my education very seriously because it is a privilege to have access to education and go through all that and go to university. My parents didn't get to go, so I've tried to have fun along the way, and still just work hard. And that kind of ethic has kind of done me good, if that's very bad English, but done me very well to carry on through life, because it's that baseline of good habit and knowing that you work for what you earn.
Yeah, and it sounds like you definitely had to put that into practice when you spent, long days in the lab coming up with your medical breakthrough. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think for me, as soon as I finished university, I said to myself, I just want to travel the world as any university student. And I ended up getting this job at a small company that was looking at detecting breast cancer using this stuff, hair. And it sounded really interesting. So I was like, yeah, I will do that. I think I'll go and do this job. And it was really, I was just a laboratory technician at the time, but I used to, see things in my hair because I used to donate it to the studies at the time. And so I ended up, just to cut a very long story short, finding out, I should say, that I could detect breast cancer using my hair. I found it, but what was causing it was not breast cancer. So I was able to show that it was a specific type of fat that was coming up as a breast cancer looking feature. And that all sounds very crazy, but the thing is, what it allowed me to do was say, here's what is causing this change in the hair, which to that point in time, the company hadn't elucidated that. And then from there, it was like, well, how does something get from, let's say, breast cancer's in the breast and your hair is up here? How does it get there? And it travels through the blood. So these specialized fats, specific fats were floating around in the blood. And what that made me realize was, perhaps we could develop a blood test for breast cancer detection. And that's what my colleague and I embarked on at the time. And we got some people involved and formed a company and decided to give it a go.
Amazing. So where is it at now?
So it's been a long journey, and that's the thing with these sorts of things that happen in, MedTech. When you're solving a very big problem, it takes a very long time. So it's not to be, the discovery is sort of the fun part, the easy part, and then you've really got to make it happen and get it out there for all the women. And so right now it's still in what we call clinical trial phase. So when you come up with an idea, you've really got to validate it a few times using more experiments. And then you've got to show that you can do it again and again very reliably, so that by the time it gets to someone like your mother or your daughters or whoever it is that's using the test, it's, safe, secure, and effective. And so that takes, quite a few years, and that's where it's at now. It's in the clinical trial phase.
And it does sound like it is, a lengthy phase. What sort of skills do you think are really important for a scientist? I mean, persistence, work ethic. What do you think are the 3 top skills to prepare you for that sort of a discovery or lifestyle choice?
I think you've always got to have problem solving, because that's, critical and analytical thinking. So you're always thinking to solve problems, and if something doesn't work, you've got to be able to keep going and reiterate that data and think, oh, what could I do next? So problem solving is absolutely up there. The second is collaboration. So being able to work with other people anywhere in the world, because solving these huge problems isn't just one person's job, and you won't be able to do it as one person. You will need help. And the third one is adaptability, because in this industry, and any industry that you're working in, technology is always moving really, really fast, and you want to be able to evolve and not get stuck behind in the past, and keep moving and change your methods so that you're always at the forefront of what's happening next. So they're the 3 things.
And in terms of just keeping informed and educated in this like rapidly changing space, how do you keep up with technology? How do you keep up with these different scientific methods? What's your advice on that?
It's lots of talking to people, actually. There's obviously, you can research and read until your heart's content, but in science you do attend conferences a lot, scientific conferences, conferences in the business world as well. It's just good to be out there, A, talking about your own science, B, listening to others and hearing what their science is, because you don't know where the ideas of how you can apply your science can come from until you speak to somebody else. You might be designing a fantastic new chemical and you're like, it is for grass. This is what it's going to be used for. And then you talk to somebody else over here and they're like, actually, you know what? I could probably use that on my windows as well. And you think, oh, I've just opened a whole new box of, applications for this technology. And that's the beauty of it. You've got to talk to people.
So how long do you think it will be before your blood test is out there on the market? And what will that feel like for you, knowing that you're potentially saving lives?
I think it'll still take another, maybe 3 to 5 years to jump through those loopholes, and the company, I'm sure, are doing everything they can to make that happen. When I first came up with the idea, it didn't hit me, as in it was just a little bit of science that I first had thought about. And then I zoomed out and thought, oh, this is the impact it could have. This is the potential it could have. And once that happened, that's what motivated me to keep going, because I did this for a very long time and persevered through a lot of challenges. And so for me, that feeling will be just giving back, and all the people that I've met along the way and all the women that I've spoken to that have been interested in this, I would just love for them to be able to have that safety feeling of something that is really accurate and can give them a peace of mind, and I will feel very happy if that happens.
And at that time when you made that discovery, that eureka moment, you were at the age of 22.
Yes.
What was that like? I mean, it was your first job. What was it like to peak, not saying peak.
I know what you mean. But
It must have been such an unbelievable experience.
I think, yeah, it really was so unbelievable that it, like I said earlier, it didn't hit me until I started to think about it. It took me a little while to sort of go, oh my gosh, it was such a little scientific bubble initially. I was like, oh, I know what's happening and perhaps why. But then it was like, hold on, do you know what this could do for people out there? And it was, personally, I hadn't had a strong family history of anything like that. So it wasn't something that I fully understood. I had cancer in the family, but different types. So once I started going out there and speaking to people and understanding, it was just a really, yes, this is what I want to do. And then I started to think about how could this be applied to other types of cancers. And yes, I was young. All it meant was I learned a lot very quickly. I made a lot of mistakes very quickly, and that was okay. You just got to ride the wave.
I've got a question here from Laura, who wants to know, as a scientist, what did a regular workday look like for you?
Yeah, okay. So as a scientist, it varies, especially when I was a scientist in a business environment as opposed to a university environment. But they can be very similar. So it's a lot of creative thinking in terms of designing your experiments and planning and organizing your day and thinking, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. A lot of your time can be spent in a laboratory carrying out your experiments, which is always for me a fun place to be. But then there is, a whole bunch of that is also analyzing data. So you're sitting down and looking through what you've collected and then thinking about what's next. There's also traveling between cities and perhaps even domestically or internationally, whatever is involved, and collaborating with groups. So a lot of my PhD I did in Melbourne at another institute, even though I was at Macquarie University. So it's a typical day is 50% practical, 50% theoretical, and lots of talking to people in between.
I've got a question here from Madeline, who wants to know who's been your greatest role model and why.
Good one. I know it's going to sound cliche, but it really is my family, my parents, because they just taught me from a young age to set out and have a go and keep going. There weren't I didn't have access to a lot of literature and things like that because my parents didn't go to university. So any reading about female scientists and things like that were done at school. And, you'd read about Mercury and all these people have done amazing things. I never thought that that's something I would be able to do until I discovered science. So for me, it is people, not just my parents, but people that I see that make the most of something when given very little, if that makes sense, and being able to be resilient and come up from not having much and keep going even when something's taken away from you. I've met a lot of inspiring women and men along the way that have been able to come into my life at different time points and show me that and remind me that.
Why do you think girls need to get into STEM?
Because the opportunities available to you are endless, and I don't say that lightly. What I mean by that is science as a subject is extremely broad. There are 100 million different disciplines within science. You could be an astronomer, you could be a biologist, you could be a chemist, you could be an immunologist. There are so many avenues and options, and I think it's one of the best sectors to be in terms of, I'll try this, I don't really like this, I'm not sure if I'm good at this. You can easily pivot and try something new because the skills you learn as a core, the fundamentals of being a scientist can be applied to any of those, and it's just a matter of learning. I think the other thing is just the impact you can have, right? Everyday person, nothing exceptional here, no extra privileges in life, but I've been able to do something that can radically shift the way we detect breast cancer, which is a huge thing because we're always trying to find a purpose, or some people are in life, and it always makes a difference when you can have an impact on the world that you see in front of you. And especially for the young people out there, I think, if you want to design new buildings, that's STEM. If you want to design a new textile for clothes that's sustainable, that's STEM. You want to bring in a new food in that makes it, harming less animals, that's STEM. Climate change, that's STEM. That's STEM, that's STEM. So STEM allows you to create that world that you dream of or that you wish for. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned. It's a very powerful degree to have.
This is a good segue into Vanessa's question, who wants to know, why do you think less and less girls are pursuing careers in STEM-related fields? It's a good question, I think.
Sorry?
It's a good question.
Yes, it's a very good question. I think there's a lot of different reasons why, there's been lots of metrics around this stuff in the last few years, and it comes down to understanding why they don't pursue it. And I think that comes down to confidence and understanding that you can do just as well as anybody else. I personally never had that barrier because I had a brother and I didn't think I couldn't do anything he was doing. And I think at a young age, there are lots of stereotypes, and we just need to bust those stereotypes. And, I know lots of female engineers. I think the biologies, we've been very fortunate. There's a good mix in terms of gender and people pursuing. But there are some hard sciences like maths and where it's very male dominated. And we do need to see more role models that can say, hold on a second, I can do this, and here's what I've done, and here's why young women shouldn't give up, or young girls need to be interested. I've got a daughter myself, and I don't want her to just be doing specific things. I want her to try everything, even if she's bad at it, good at it, doesn't matter. I think it's about how we shape people from the beginning is what I'm trying to say. And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to your environment very early on, and then your nurturing and encouragement as you move through school and university. And school is pivotal. I had really good science teachers that never told me I had any limitations, and that's also a very important piece.
Such a gift. What about you're a scientist turned entrepreneur? Did being a scientist prepare you or with those business skills that you needed to co-found a business? Talk us through that sort of rapid learning curve.
Yeah, it was a very different world, taking an innovation out of a lab into business. It really was a different language, a different way of communicating. So no, it didn't prime me for that. But the like I keep saying this, but the fundamentals of science, the problem solving and being able to do things was easily translatable. That was a really good piece that I could take anywhere I went in any sector. The thing that I made sure I did was just learn, go in there and be open-minded and just say to myself, I'm going to do this. The biggest thing I think we can always do is practice our communication. Because even if you're coming from science or business, you need to be able to communicate to the other party, and everybody is always talking in a very different way. It's like me telling you about the breast cancer blood test in the most convoluted, technical, scientific way. You'd just be like, I don't know what you're saying. But if I just say a blood test for breast cancer research or breast cancer detection or whatever it is I'm doing, that's more relatable. And as people, we practice that, and that's been the biggest skill that I've learned. It means, you're learning to pitch, you're learning to do presentations or do talks like this. It's always trying to communicate more effectively.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, these sorts of things are what's taught in the Academy for Enterprising Girls. So things like pitching, coming up with a name, logo, how to market, how to budget. Are these sorts of skills that you wished you'd perhaps learned earlier as a young student, for example?
Yes, 100%. I think when you pick something you're doing at school or uni, you end up kind of narrowing down a specific path, and you don't really get to learn all the other things that make you multi-skilled or multifaceted or able to do more than one thing, more than one discipline, I should say. So for me, in science, I learned loads of amazing core skills, but I didn't, really get a chance to do pitching or learn about the business side of things, the numbers, the budgeting, all that stuff, that business plans and all that sort of stuff. And so I did all that in real time, but I also did take the initiative to do some short courses and things along the way. And those, if I had a chance to do them earlier, I would have said go for it, because all you're doing is cementing that behavior and habit and multi-skilling yourself. That's my biggest focus in life, is always keep learning and multi-skilling yourself.
How are you continuing your journey of education now, even today? Like, what are you reading, listening to? How are you educating yourself?
Yeah, I guess I always try and do it as part of my job, right? So my job is challenging because I've now gone from working for something I know very well, which is science, and now I'm on the other side of the fence and helping other companies to do what I did before. And so that means if it's a challenge, I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow, because I'm going to be putting myself in a position where I'm not totally comfortable. It's a little bit out of my comfort zone, and that forces me to learn more about the space I'm in, and to get familiar and talk to people. But yeah, I mean, reading is, you can read New Scientist, like that, all the articles that come out. It's just about also what generally interests you, right? Don't do things for the sake of it, I suppose. And the other way of doing that is just joining groups, talking to people. Like this Academy for Enterprising Girls is a great way to do that, to multi-skill yourself. That's the sort of thing. If I had more time, I do have a almost 2-year-old, so that does take up a lot of my time now. But if I have stuff like that, but I also do extracurricular things to keep my mind free, learn to knit or learn to run better because I really hate running, stuff like that.
Yeah, fantastic. And I want to know now about your mentors, how important that's been along your business journey and how you acquired them, I guess.
Okay, that's a really good question because I think I've had different mentors along the way, but I've always had one or two key people that I've met early on in my career. So the first one was my boss at the time when I made the discovery with the hair. And he was the one that kind of pushed me to think about doing a PhD, and I was adamant. I was like, no, not what I want to do. And he's just like, but just have a think about it. Go away and think about it. You know, you really love this project. And I thought, oh, okay, because it just wasn't on the cards for me in my mind. So for me, mentors are people that you can have a good sounding board with, so you can tell them and they can give you very critical feedback, and you can be not too soft about it. You take it on the chin and you talk through things. People that are supportive, but also push you and challenge you just that bit more. So I've had a couple of people, but that one mentor, I met him very early on in my journey, and he's still, you know, we'll catch up for coffee. And if I'm thinking about the next iteration of my life, I'll be like, okay, my career, you know, I can easily just be like, what do you think of this? Or do you think I'm, you know, honest feedback.
Yeah, so
So
wonderful.
one mentors is, it's a gut feel as well. It's someone you get along with, and you may not know, and it's okay to have more than one. That's my biggest rule of thumb. Like, you're going to learn so much from so many people. So even if it's a 20-minute catch up with someone you've only just met and you've decided, I like this person, and there's another person you meet, you should just meet different people regularly when you can, that sort of thing. Like, you create your own board of supporters.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, look, Dharmica, I won't steal any more of your time. I wanted to thank you very much for all your really valuable insights. I'm sure that lots of people watching will be very inspired. And for anyone who is wanting to kickstart their own entrepreneurial journey and learn the values of STEM, they can head to enterprisinggirls.com.au. So thank you again, Dharmica. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, for listening in, and thank you very much, Jess, for having me.
No worries. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.